Lisa Shield is a love, dating, and relationship coach with over 2 decades of experience. She has a master's degree in spiritual psychology, is certified through the Coaches Training Institute, and has been featured in Huffington Post, Buzzfeed, LA Times, and Cosmopolitan. Lisa has been with the guardian of her soul for over 20 years, and through her revolutionary approach has taught powerful, successful women all over the world how to take what she calls the feminine lead to get emotionally naked and find the soulmate of their dreams. Lisa, first of all, what do you tell people going on a first date? What do they have to be aware of?
Wow. Um, don't interview a man. Don't go with a list of questions that you're like a news reporter and you're trying to find out, check all the boxes and see if he's worth your time and trouble. If you do that, you're going to really push a man away very quickly, and the date won't be fun. And more often than not, it just doesn't lead to a second date because there's no connection. So we want our women to be in their hearts and in the moment and really curious about that man sitting across from them rather than having interview questions and a checklist.
Okay, interesting. So, what is the ideal soulmate for a woman, and what is the ideal soulmate for a man, from your expertise point of view?
It's a complicated question. Women are looking by and large, even though a lot of women today are very masculine and they reject men who are trying to cherish and adore them and make them happy. That's really what they want at their core. They want a man who can take the lead and who will allow them to let go of that masculine facade and relax and be themselves. But at the same time, a lot of women push that away. And I think men are looking for very feminine women. They want women who are playful and fun to be around, women who are uncomplicated. Women can be very dramatic and like a puzzle to a man. And they would love a woman who can be fun and ask for what she wants in a non-shaming way. They actually prefer directness. They don't love when a woman makes a man play guessing games and jump through hoops. So, but they want women who can do that in a fun, playful, feminine way. So if I were to cut to the chase, I really do believe that most men are very drawn to feminine women who really can bring out their masculinity, and women are drawn to very masculine men who can bring out their femininity.
I can certainly relate to that, yes. So, in your opinion, what goes wrong in so many relationships?
Well, these are wonderful questions. So many things. I think the very first thing is a partner can only make you happier. They can't make you happy if you're not happy. And so if you go into the dating world with an illusion that finding a partner is going to fix everything, and you have a magical fantasy about this person's going to come into my life and fill this void that is there, it doesn't work. Your partner is not there to save you or rescue you. Having said that, a partner will make you happier. A partner will make you more fulfilled. But I also think that when I was doing this work, I had a real revelation. I wanted unconditional love. I think, I stood back and I looked at all the spiritual paths and all the work I was doing on myself, and I realized that unconditional love isn't a fantasy, it's real. And most spiritual paths are pointing us in that direction. And so I asked myself, if this is real and it's not an ideal, how would I achieve that? And the answer that came back to me was, in order to receive unconditional love, you have to first learn how to love unconditionally. And so that's what I did. I think too many people approach dating as a means to an end, and they have a much higher opinion of what they're capable of in a relationship than they really are. It takes tremendous emotional intelligence and vulnerability and ownership, personal responsibility to have a mature, healthy, peaceful, equanimous, romantic relationship. And so this is the highest test of who we really are. And it's not like this perfect person is going to show up and then suddenly you'll step into this magical dynamic. You have to first learn how to be the person you want to attract. And then you will attract that and create that dynamic.
Yeah. Well, I certainly can relate to that from my own experience, having gone through two divorces, that a relationship is very much a reflection of where you yourself are at. And
Yes.
absolutely, you won't get love if you don't give love. But so many people seem to be afraid of love, unconditional love.
They are. And so many people are afraid to admit it really exists, because if you admit that it's real, then you have to look at yourself and say, why don't I have that? And do the work on yourself to be able to have it. And that's actually, what we do in our work with the women that we coach. I take them through the journey that I went on. I can't say that every woman who works with us is able to achieve this, but many, many women are. And the quality, what I realized is that it's more difficult to create this within a relationship. It's much easier if you are single and dating to actually use the dating process to work through a lot of these issues on your own. Because so much of this, when you're trying to work it out with a partner, I'm not saying you can't do it with somebody, but water seeks its own level, like you said, and two people come together at a certain level of consciousness at the time that they are, that they meet. And so it's not always, in order to really do this work, you're not going to work it out necessarily with your partner. You have to do that work on yourself. And then sometimes it'll shift the dynamic within the context of the relationship. But it's much easier if you can do this when you're dating and then attract a partner who's already there.
Absolutely. You mentioned in one of your interviews that you need to clone George Clooney many times over. What did you mean with that?
Well, I think it might have been a joke. I think I'd rather say, I wish I could clone my husband. I don't think anybody could, I've never met a man who could hold a candle to him. And yeah, I just, and I think every woman should talk about her partner that way. George Clooney is objectively, he's the example many women think that they're striving for. Although I don't know what he's like in a real, I don't know George Clooney. I don't know what he's really like, but there aren't, there are wonderful men out there. And I think, we were talking right before we started recording, many men are not drawn to doing personal growth work, but many men do stumble into it because of a divorce. they wind up in therapy, maybe with their wife, they wind up in couples therapy. And then after the marriage dissolves, they may continue on seeing the value, you
Yes.
know.
According to my experience, a lot of relationships kind of happen without the previous relationship really having been transmuted, and then all these issues from the previous relationship then being projected into the new one, and then it goes
Mhm.
sour, and then it's the
Uh-huh.
next, and then it's the next relationship and the next one, but the real
Yeah.
issue is not being addressed. The self-work is not being done.
Yeah. And that's the proverbial baggage, right? That we lug from one relationship to the next. And like you said, if we don't stop and really look at ourselves and our part, like just to give you an example, I don't know why or how I had the wisdom to, make this choice. But when my first marriage ended, I looked at that marriage and I said, look, I spent 13 years of my life with him. And almost every single day, I told myself I could do better, but I was afraid to leave. And when I finally did leave the marriage, I said to myself, he has to figure himself out. I don't know why he did the things he did and made the choices he made, but I needed to look at myself and figure out why I picked him and why I chose to stay for 13 years. So I knew that, trying to analyze his stuff was not productive. I needed to look at myself. And I think that that's something we all need to do, is to stop blaming our partners and feeling like victims and look at ourselves and the choices we made. That's how we're going to move forward
Yeah,
and let go of
absolutely.
the
Yeah.
baggage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I would certainly say in retrospect, I stayed in dysfunctional relationships too long, hoping the other person would change, but it never does.
Yeah.
I agree.
No, and if you continue to blame them, you're still in the relationship. As long as you're holding on and blaming and all, you might as well still be with that person because, you can't change them. The only person you can change is yourself.
yeah.
And that's the magic of all of this.
Um, Lisa, what keeps people single for so long?
Oh, you really did your homework. Wow. I'm very impressed. What keeps people single for so long? A couple of things that I'll address that I think are really important, that people need to be aware of. You can be doing work, and many people are. They're reading libraries full of self-help books and following coaches and gurus and mentors and all, and thinking, going to therapy. But something that is so important, there's a few things. Information is not transformation. And I'll say it again, information is not transformation. One of the biggest mistakes we make is that we information gather, but we do not implement what we're learning. So we read books and we feel like we're getting smarter and smarter and smarter. And back to what we were talking about before we started to record, women love to think that they're doing all this quote work on themselves, but what they're really doing, many of them, is just information collecting. If you do not get out and apply what you're learning, it's useless. So that's number one. That keeps women single for much longer, keeps people single because they're not applying what they learn. The second thing is they are not doing work that is directly related to this specific issue. So you can keep doing generalized self-help work. It's like going to school, you can study a subject, but if it's not related to this thing that you're actually trying to do, you can go and study generic programming, but if you want to be an AI specialist, you have to study AI. So people are not focusing on the actual problem itself. And they're doing all these other random things thinking it will fix the problem. When I was turning 40, I woke up and I had this real heart to heart. And this is bringing me to my next issue. People are under this illusion that we have nothing but time. It is an illusion. Time is our most precious commodity of all, and women are wasting vast amounts of time just, hoping and wishing and praying the right guy will show up, but they're not focused on actually solving this problem. So when I was turning 40, I woke up and I said, Lisa, half of your life is gone. Half. 40 years old, think about that. How many more Christmases, how many more summers, how many more birthdays do you have to celebrate with the guardian of your soul? If I'm lucky, I may have 40 more healthy, vibrant, summers, vacations to go on. And so I woke up and I said, no more lying on a therapist's couch, no more, self-help workshops. And I posted my online dating profile and I said, I am going on as many dates as I have to go on. I will go out with 1,000,000 men. There has to be somebody out there for me. But I am not going to sit around, and quitting isn't an option. This is too important. It took me 2 years and 96 first dates to find my husband.
Wow, that is quite a number. So you certainly went through much experience before you decided, no, this is going to be it. What I find is that there's a difference between compatibility and physical desire. Uh,
Yes.
like in some cultures, the families would choose the partner, and I'm surprised that so many of these marriages are then a success because they say, well, love grows because there's a basis, there's a foundational compatibility. But we in our Western world are so focused on the physical aspect of a relationship. Has to be so tall or so thin or be blonde or whatever.
But it's, look, Mother Nature wired us for procreation. That's what we are wired for. So there are so many things that factor into sexual attraction. And that's what we were designed for. So, and it's humbling, I think, as a human being to admit that that's where, in the end, we are in many, many ways controlled or driven by our basic instincts, which is why it is so important to put sex on hold and really do some work in this part of your life. Because if you're only going on your basic instincts, which so many people are, and they don't even know it, they have all of these, like you said, oh, he has to be this tall and have this kind of job and do, look like this and whatever. And really underneath all of that is nothing sound,
Hmm.
nothing,
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah.
It's all biological.
Mm.
We believe it. We buy into our own stories. So, we recommend, look, I have nothing. I'm as liberal can be. I grew up in the 70s, during the sexual revolution. So I don't have any hangups about sex, but if you're choosing a life partner, that should not be the first thing that you're basing your connection on.
Yeah, definitely very different. And um, coming back to the compatibility issue, what makes a couple compatible?
Well, again, excellent question. What makes a couple compatible are basic core values. So that's the first and foremost thing that is going to play out in the long run, is if two people see the world, see life from a similar perspective. So, again, just going back to my own personal experience, my first husband was not Jewish. We had a lot in common. We were both photographers. There were a lot of commonalities, but our core principles, we weren't raised in the same way. I decided this time around, even though I am not religious by any stretch of the imagination, my husband and I have been to temple once together for a memorial. So we are not religious at all, but we were both raised in Jewish families. Our values, how we see the world, what we want in life are the same. And we are so aligned that it's uncanny how alike we are at our core.
So would you recommend that couples first get to know each other really to suss out their value
Yeah.
systems before going to bed?
Oh my God, yes. I think it is the hugest mistake, because then it becomes all about going to bed together, and every date you're going to wind up, back at your place or her place. And that's not where you want it to be. We can all get laid. Most of us know how to find somebody and get in the sack. That's not, if you're looking for lasting love, you have to slow this process down and do things differently.
Mm.
And that's the mistake so many of us make and have made. I just literally took sex out of my toolbox. This was really an important thing, because I always had been a very sexual person. And so this time around, I just said, look, you can't keep doing that. It doesn't end well. And when I met Benjamin on our fifth date, I think, he said, I really like you and I really want to get to know you. And I'm not rushing into anything, including sex. And I said, that's wonderful, because we're on exactly the same page. And we actually had a ball. We were like teenagers. I mean, we made out. It was very hot and sexy and all, but we didn't sleep together.
Yeah, I think that's such an important message for young people today who seem
Yeah.
so confused about sex, starting very early, and of course the factor of pornography playing a role and uh, confusing so many people.
Yeah, it's huge. And I think for men, the pornography thing is just horrific. I mean, there is so much porn addiction. It is an epidemic. And, I don't know if people realize, because there's so much about, oh, boys will be boys. And it's,
Mm.
other guys support it, and oh, and they rib each other and whatever. But it's so addictive. It is so, so addictive. And especially for men who are having a hard time with women and having relationships and all, it is so much easier just to get swept up in porn, and the effect on the brain and brain
Hmm.
chemistry.
Hmm.
It's awful. And women get addicted too, by the way. There's a lot of female porn addiction.
Hmm. But I
Those,
think men and women relate to it differently. Men, I think, are more visually affected than women, perhaps. Am I wrong there?
I think it's not as many women. I think the percentage is, but you'd be surprised. You would be surprised that women are very addicted. There's a rush. There's a whole thing to it. I also think, if you're going to really look at this, women also, there's a lot of, how do I say this? Men and women also have different issues. Like for women, a lot of women have religious and social pressures not to be sexual. So for them, getting caught up in porn is for a whole different reason.
Mm,
Some men are struggling to find ways to connect with women, and so they're turning to porn, but women also are being, are suppressed because they're told it's not okay to be sexual, you can't have sex, and so they go to porn for that reason.
mhm. How important is the whole issue of trust and being monogamous in a relationship?
Well, first of all, I think, I'm going to just give you a very personalized view, and people may or may not agree with me. This is my personal perspective. Um, I don't know where you live, but there is a tremendous amount of polyamory here in this country. There's a whole polyamorous movement. And there are many, many, many people who are getting caught up in that whole dynamic. Um, I think for men, it's really it serves men in a lot of ways. And I think women who are not self-confident and do not have good boundaries and struggle with relationships may acquiesce quite frequently and give into it, or they may think, well, I can give this a try. But many women I know wind up getting burned, they get hurt, they don't want polyamorous relationships. They do it because they're going along with the guy. I'm not saying it's all women, but I'm
Mm,
saying a lot of women are monogamous by nature, but they give into it and they wind up getting very hurt because the man can go from person to person, whereas it's not as easy for a woman to do that. She can get pregnant, she can get sexual diseases much quicker. I mean, there's so many
mm,
reasons why it's very dangerous for women to get involved in polyamorous relationships. Um, I do think there is also a whole movement of couples having, relationships with other couples, whatever. But if that's in the context of a very strong monogamous, relationship within a couple where there is safety and trust and they choose to experiment together as couples, that's a very different experience than polyamory.
mhm. I have my own personal view about this. I think a relationship is challenging enough, and then when other people are involved, that gets very complicated.
It does in most couples. I'm not saying all couples, but most couples are not able to handle it. Now, I can tell you because I've coached couples and singles and whatever. Right now, I primarily work with women, but I've coached every configuration imaginable. And I will tell you that there are um, I've met, couples and I've met women who have been in relationships where the husband cheated, and it actually turned out to be the best thing for that relationship because the relationship had been so blocked and there was no communication and it had gotten so stultified that opened up a whole new level of connection and conversation. And, so you can't have it, one cannot have a one-sided view of things. I've seen, situations where it absolutely brought the couple together. And, sometimes they opened up their sexual, they had a relationship where they opened up the sexual freedom within the relationship for both partners. And they both agreed and wanted that. And it actually was a wonderful thing for a couple that had been together for many, many years. So it's very hard to have a one-dimensional view You know, we're all different. Our cosmology is different. Our psychology is different. But by and large, it is not something that most people, you can't, starting at the level of polyamory without the safety and the trust in the relationship and an agreed upon a contract where both people agreed that this is something they want to explore together as a couple, that's a whole different thing.
Mhm. But I definitely would require a lot of maturity and
Yes.
self-work, I would say.
Absolutely, but I don't see why people cannot evolve through those stages. I just don't think you can skip stages.
Mm.
So I'm saying that to do that in a really healthy way would take, like you said, a very mature couple who could handle that.
Mhm. Uh, Lisa, we could carry on talking for many hours. It's such an interesting topic. Um, Now, for our woman listeners, we have most of our listeners are women. How can they find their high value man?
Work with us. Work with, it's there's no the real secret to finding a high value man is becoming a high value woman. And becoming a high value woman does not mean that you have a fabulous job and a beautiful body and money in the bank and whatever. Those are wonderful parts of that's an aspect of this. But what many, many women miss is that you have to learn how to be feminine. You have to learn about male psychology. You have to really learn how to respect men, how to talk to men, how to ask for what you want and need in a relationship without wanting a man to read your mind and without shaming a man because he didn't know and just figure it out. So there's so many aspects to becoming that high quality woman. And it's, women have this perspective that, oh, but look at my resume, look at what I've accomplished. All my girlfriends tell me how fabulous I am, and they can't understand why I'm single. If high quality men are not attracted to you, you need to start to look at that and ask yourself why. And it's not because you intimidate them.
Mhm. That's a great closing statement. How can people connect with you?
They can find me all over the internet, but mostly if you really want to look at what I'm doing, you can go to lisashield.com. And I have all over my website, I have a podcast of my own and many, many episodes with my husband. It's called Finding the Guardian of Your Soul. And the episodes with Benjamin are called Getting Inside the Right Male Mind. Those are very much worth listening to because he expresses what amazing men are looking for in a way that I've never heard any other man voice these things. And you can click the button to watch my free 45-minute presentation. And if you like what you hear, you can get on a call with my team and they will talk to you about how we can help you. I actually have a 6-month program, a coaching program called Emotionally Naked Dating, where we work with women to find the guardians of their souls.
Yeah, and we'll post those links below in the show notes.
Thank you.
Lisa, it was great talking to you. A great wisdom from your side. Thank you very much.